Hello, ladies and gentlemen, yet another time. You're listening to my very first podcast, and you might be asking yourself, why is that? So, I think podcasts are really nice because you can listen to them while surfing. And the reason this is a podcast and not a video is just because of that. I don't want to provide a visual content along with it, so you can have it in the background, just chill and listen to me talking about stuff. And B, I think podcast is the better medium to spread content that's not that big or not that worked out and not that streamlined. I'd say not that focused as an article. So sometimes I have a topic I want to talk about or bring it out to you guys, and there's just not enough for me to write an article on. And so I've chosen this opportunity to sort of create a podcast and talk about 3-4 different things in each podcast. And yeah, we will see how this goes and how you like this format of content. So yeah, let me start with the first thing. Since I'm planning to do these regularly from now on, I want to get into this sort of habit of having a few constant things in the podcast, which is at the end of each podcast, I want to give you guys my pet cards, so to speak, the cards I've recently added to a wide variety of my decks, and the cards I cut from a wide variety of decks. So the favorites and the not so favorites, so to speak, of the last few weeks and months. I will do at the end of the episode. And to start the episode, I want to go for a little update on my road to the 32 decks I'm planning to do. So all color combinations, all monocolored, all dual colored, the tricolored things, 4-color and 5-color, and of course colorless. So yeah, I've just finished my blue-white deck. How many decks I'm short? I'm short. The mono-white deck isn't finished yet. The 4-color, I have 3 left. Yes, 3.5 left. The Grixis, I've currently disbanded. So the Nexar deck, I just disband, and then I think that's it. Yeah, the colorless deck, but the colors is a bit on hold because of Oath of the Gatewatch coming in the near future, and yeah, I figured maybe I'll wait for that. There's gonna be a big bunch of Eldrazi support in that set, I guess, and yeah. So yeah, I've just finished my blue-white deck. I played it once and it was okay, I guess. A bit counter-heavy, and I guess if I hadn't had the heuristic study, it wouldn't have been that successful. But as it was, I think it went okay. I'm not sure if it's really a deck I want to keep in the way it is right now. But yeah, we will see. Yeah. The mono white deck I've not much worked on so far. Celestial Kirin is pretty straightforward. You just play a bunch of spirits. I want to do a little CMC count in my meta and look for any pattern so I can focus on CMC 5, whatever. So I will look out the next few playgroup meetings for particular CMC patterns, and then tune the deck accordingly once I'm building it. Other workplaces, I guess, of my 4-color spirits deck. So I'm currently working on 2 spirits deck, which is kind of funny. But yeah, the 4-color spirits deck is just like Soul Shift, Sacrifice, maybe. Yeah, I'm not really settled on the theme. It's kind of hard to build if I incorporate a heavy sacrifice theme, because I want to have plenty of room for Soul Shift and Good Spirits, and I want this little Life Spinner toolbox, like the Kuldota Forge Masterful Legendary Spirits. I want this to have in the deck as well, and then suddenly there's not much room left for general utility and ramp stuff. So yeah, that's a bit of a point where I'm not sure where I want to go. The Grixis deck, on the other hand, I'm fairly certain I want to go for a aggressive burn, direct damage, punishing type of route. So Sulfuric Vortex and Tekervek, and yeah. I'm planning to do Thraximunder as the general, like just 7 mana haste in your face, and it has a neat effect, so it's not that big a deal. So yeah, and last thing, I'm kind of thinking about changing my Allura deck to 4-color with red. So I'm not sure what's his name, the Nephilim that reanimates when attacking. Just because Allura doesn't do very much for the deck. He's just like sitting in command zone, providing 2 life. I mean, that's a really cool effect, and it's very much appreciated. But to be honest, I'm not that kind of a guy that wants to play a general as a, so to speak, color war. And yeah, so maybe I want to get the Nephilim instead of Loro. It gives me another color and it fits the theme better. So it's like this blink value, enter the battlefield creature theme deck, and with reanimates and stuff. So the Nephilim definitely would fit the theme very good. Yeah. So yeah, I talked about the colorless EDH, so I've put my notes then in front of me. So the colorless EDH currently, so pre-Oath of the Gatewatch or even pre-Battle for Zendikar, is a very unique thing, just because you run 100% non-basic lands, of course. And this is a thing that can hurt the deck very much. Like there are some things like Wave of Vitriol and stuff that just annihilate you. But on the other hand, having that much utility in your mana base is really strong at times and kind of makes up for it sometimes. What I really find funny is that with the introduction of Oath of the Gatewatch, and if the wastes come in a way that we think they will, or like the spoiled way, rather, that puts the colorless EDHs or the colorless commander decks in a very funny spot, because suddenly you can play like Solemn Simulacrum, Wayfarer's Bauble, and the likes in a colorless deck, which is it's good because you can ramp other than just mana rocks, which was a pretty big weakness, because like destroying all artifacts or something would not only hit your creatures and stuff, but also your entire ramp strategy. So yeah, that's one thing. Second thing, I think we will see very much more colorless EDHs, so colorless decks, just because money isn't an issue anymore if the basic lands come at a price that's like reasonable. So before, the colorless mana bases were a bit expensive, especially because in Commander you can build a triple color mana base for like very low money. Especially if it involves green, because you can just like cultivate and Calamus Reach fix you all time, or all the time, every day. And yeah, and also I think what I really like about post Oath of the Gatewatch, if as I said, if the waste mechanic and the mana works like we think it does, is that colorless decks kind of get this exclusiveness feel, in a way that some decks might play like the waste mana cards, but not many. And suddenly you have cards that are exclusively played in these colorless decks, which is kind of cool because I think it adds a very really cool feeling to the deck if there are cards you know no other person plays if he's not playing colorless. So that added to the fact that Battle for Zendika introduced some very cool cards like Scar from Existence, which is like 7 mana, exile target permanent. That's just like a colorless card, and it's suddenly colorless has instants and sorceries other than Auror's Dust. So yeah, I think in the future we will see a bit more colorless decks, which is a good thing, I think. So yeah, for my own colors project, I would have chosen the Kozilek 1-0. So just like drawing 4 cards is awesome, of course. But since the new Kozilek spoiled, I figured maybe I will go with this one because he has like probably draw 4 as well, and he has like he doesn't have Annihilator, which is I think will save some salt in my play group, and his effects is definitely awesome. So like no one can argue that the discard counter target spell effect isn't like really strong and really nice to have in a colorless deck, especially. So yeah. We will see. Like, I will wait for Oath of the Gatewatch and go from there. Alright, next up we have this neat little idea I had for New Year's, which is giving introducing a type of fun card into your playgroup. If you have a regular one, that's called challenge, just like challenge accepted, basically. Which I got the idea, I don't know where and when, but I kind of felt like, hey, it's New Year, maybe I give everyone in my playgroup a quest kind of thing to explore in the next year and build a deck that this person in particular hasn't built or isn't very keen to build in the future. So this person gets this quest and they hopefully accept it and will try to build a deck according to whatever you gave them. So, for example, you have this Tyrant counter all the things guy in your playgroup. And you say, hey, it's cool that you play these type of stacks, but maybe you should like change your feud to EDH and to Commander and maybe try something new. And then you design this challenge for him. It's like an enchantment, but it sits in the command zone. And what it does is it provides an effect, just like an enchantment would, but out of the command zone. So it's always in the command zone, like Oloro, for example, and it has this whatever effect that will make this guy build a deck around and hopefully make him build a deck that's not very like him. I have made an example. Let me show you that real quick. I'll put it up on the screen, but for those of you who are just listening, I will explain it, of course. So I call it the New Year's resolution, but you can name it whatever you want. I'm using Magic Set Editor, by the way. So Legendary Challenge, the subtype, maybe just the name of the guy or the girl you're designing it for. And in my example, I said the Tyrant player that's countering all the things. And okay, so we have this enchantment challenge thing. And it says, at the end of your turn, if you control no untapped lands, draw a card. So basically it rewards this player for tapping out on his turn, which in return makes him not counter all the things on opposing turns. And to add to that, I figured maybe that would just make him feel like unsafe and make him really angry because I can't counter things and then everybody attacks me. So I just played in defense, and then I added this second effect. Whenever you attack with more than one non-token creature, put a 1/1 soldier token with vigilance into play. So what this does is he also gets this kind of I'm not playing on defense, and I'm not generating value and making everyone pissed until I can take over the game. But I'm tapping out, I'm drawing cards, and I'm attacking people with 2 creatures at least. And then I get my sweet little value in a 1/1 soldier token with vigilance, which then can return the next turn attack and still leave back to block. And of course, I worded it in a way that this token won't trigger the New Year's resolution itself. So yeah, that would be kind of silly. So yeah, I have, of course, for my own play group, I won't spoil them here because I know some of them out there might listen to this podcast. I've designed 6 of them so far, and I think most of them are really, really cool. And it's kind of sad that I don't get to build decks around them, but the others do. So yeah, I find it a little funny, and maybe you can also do that for your playgroup, and tell me about it. So basically, if you do design a challenge for them, maybe tell me about it and how it went, and if they built a deck around it, and yeah. And of course, the thing is, if you go overboard, it might create a very OP meta and unbalanced meta, because it's of course very hard to balance effects that stay in the command zone and can't be handled by anyone. The decks can get very abusive, of course, and that's kind of the idea behind them. On the other hand, so you just want to encourage them to abuse the challenge, of course, which will then draw them out of their comfort zone, which on the other hand is the whole point of the challenges. Let me change the topic here. Because of recent discussions with buddies of mine, I kind of got into thinking about monocolored commander decks and the things each color brings to the table when standing on its own. And I think many people underestimate red, for example, and that's only one thing. I think one of the most overrated standalone color in EDH, especially in EDH multiplayer, is blue, for example. So blue, I think, is yes. How to put it? Blue is very support heavy. So if you have a deck that's like mainly black, you throw in blue, the deck gets better tenfold. Just because blue adds this neat little utility card draw type effects, and yes, that's really all blue offers, except counters, of course, and awesome planeswalkers. So, but as a standalone color, rather, blue lacks removal. It lacks of any sort, like some colors like green or white, for example, they lack removal on the creature department, or they don't have as many options. But on the other hand, they can deal with enchantments, they can deal with artifacts, and blue doesn't deal with anything if it's not at a point where it can counter all the things. And to get to a point where there's nothing on the board that can really threaten you, and then have the resources to counter everything that's important and have enough card draw to keep it up, it's like really, really hard, and you're probably gonna lose the game anyway. So at that note, I think blue is probably one of the weakest colors, beside white, I think. White lacks just card draw, especially. It has good removal, like mass removals, and it has like the enchantment type theme. That's all well and good, but yeah, probably white, the weakest color, then comes blue. And then as a standalone color, red, black, and green kind of hard for me to rank. I would probably put up black at the first spot, just because there's so much synergy built into black as a color that I feel like green and green and red just can't compete. There's like black has some different combos, like I win buttons built into it. Can back it up with tutors, can back it up with card draw. You have removal. I mean, you're weak to artifacts and enchantments because you can't deal with those. But other than that, I feel like black has the best tools to stand alone as a color and take over a game. And yes, that's kind of the story of green and red. They have very strong cards. Standalone, like in a vacuum, one card is pretty strong. But especially red can't back it up with card draw. I mean, red can kind of work around this with loot effects like Tormenting Voice and Faithless Looting, so they can get card quality. They can dump lands if they don't need one, and they can dump expensive spells if they need land drops and stuff. And of course, every color has ramp in colorless mana rocks and stuff. But red has good removal. Red can deal with artifacts. Red has card quality, of course, and red has great beaters in Dragons with Fire Breathing and some awesome legends like Akroma, Angel of Wrath, I think. Is it of Wrath or something of Fury? The red Akroma and the red Primordial is awesome, and there are some great red beaters. And the only issue with red, of course, is card draw. And you can somehow work around this with Howling Mine effects, because I think they are highly underrated in multiplayer, just because giving your opponent one card doesn't mean this one card will get used against you. It might get used against another opponent who got the card it gets used against from your Howling Mine, so they kind of cancel out sometimes, which then means you got to draw a card for free. And green on the other hand has of course great ramp. It's really a fast color. It has rather good card draw in the draw a card for each creature you control, or draw a card equal to the power of some creature. It has Harmonize, of course, for mana draw 3. So card draw isn't really an issue for green. But green doesn't have mass removal, which is like a really big deal in EDH. Some decks go wide really fast, and they have Shroud, Indestructible and stuff. So you kind of have to deal with them as soon as possible, or else the creatures get too hard to deal with, especially if you don't have exile effects or mass removal, which both lack in green. Green does lack. So yeah, thinking about it now, I probably would rate... as a standalone color, red the second best or third best. So it's hard to say, but green and black, green and red definitely share the second place, with me probably being biased a bit by my Norin deck towards giving red the second place. So red is definitely underrated, and black with all the removal and the combos you can tutor up with the great black tutors, of course, and having great general options in Obnixilis or Erebos or like Mikaeus Triskelion combo built into the general is like really strong. So yeah, I feel like monocolored decks are highly underrated as a whole, not thinking of a specific color here, just because you're so resilient to mana base hate or like bad draws. So if you build the deck in a way that it can recover from stumbling on lands or something, there's I feel like some inevitability. You can't mistap, you can't miscalculate in some certain manner, and I will draw this or that, and the type of things some triple color decks might end up struggling with. And yeah, especially my blue deck, of course, the Gerolf Stitcher Gerolf deck, which I'm thinking about now, put up a pretty good fight the last few times I played it. It could compete power-wise with other creatures, just because I integrated this fatty theme, of course, because I wanted the deck to have the fatties on its own, so my tokens from Gerolf get big. And then you have the ramp, you can just ramp them out as well if you don't want to mill them with Gerolf. And of course card draw is always good, and you have this put on top theme for other permanents, which then can alternate the blue color identity in a way that it can suddenly deal with creatures and enchantments and other permanents in general. So I feel like the work some people put in monocolor decks kind of pays off sometimes. So if you think about your next monocolor deck, maybe try to work around the weaknesses instead of concentrating on the strengths of a color, because the strength will come. They will come automatically. So if you're playing red, you will play Blasphemous Act, you will play Into the Core, and all the good stuff that lets you deal with creatures, artifacts, and stuff. And maybe focus on how can I get this deck to draw cards? How can I get this deck to put up a good fight in an attrition-y matchup where other colors will draw cards and I have to fight through this? So maybe play one or two more loot effects. Maybe play Howling Mine or Font of Mythos, so you can draw out the game, because especially in these Howling Mine type effects that some decks play because of like Necrosaurus or stuff. These Howling Mine type effects are really strong in colors that don't draw cards. I can't stress the point enough. It's kind of funny, because if you think about a normal EDH game, there are the mono-red deck, for example. Let's take mono-red, and normally the game will end up like mono-red deck is pulling ahead because it's fast, it can deal with all the stuff, and it has awesome threats. And then there's a point where too many Master Rules have been played and red stumbles on cards, and then you fall behind as a mono-red player. And the other players are sitting there with 7 cards because they play like blue-black, for example. They play blue-black and they have like Painful Truth and all the good stuff, and yes, Eugene's Insight, Chase's Ingenuity, whatever. And you're sitting there and suddenly you realize, if I play this Howling Mine, I will draw an additional card each turn. And the blue player, suddenly the value of their card draw spell decreases, because if you're sitting at 7 cards, why would I play this like Genesis Ingenuity? It's like you will discard probably 2 cards or at least 1 card, and suddenly the Genesis Ingenuity is bad. They don't want to play it. And of course, you're giving them free resources. They can commit these resources to other things, but compared to you not having resources, it is better to give them some resources that might not get used against you than having no resources on your own. And these things add up. So a mono red deck that draws like 4 additional cards each turn because you have a Howling Mine, a Temple Bell, and stuff is very threatening, while a blue deck, blue X deck, sits there with card draw spells all over the place and has like the same amount of value cards in their hand as you have, because you don't have that many card draw spells in your deck because red doesn't offer many. And if you get your draw engines going, you will draw 3 cards each turn. And compared to them drawing 3 cards each turn, which would be a thing they would do anyway because they have these card draw spells, gives them a lot of dead cards in a way, while you won't have that many dead draws. And yeah, so I hope you get my point. fighting for words. I'm trying to make up my mind to explain it a little better, but I think you get the idea. And I think that's a big point of monocolored decks, because not every color offers a good card draw. And I'm planning to experiment with mono white with these Highlander type effects, because mono white has great removal for all threats. They can remove permanents, they can remove enchantments, they can remove artifacts, they can remove creatures. They have mass removal, and maybe like a mono white control deck with Howling Mine, Font of Mythos, and the likes could end up really strong. And maybe that's like a hole where people haven't experimented yet. I will think about this the next few days and weeks, and maybe incorporate it in some type of build. Like, probably not my mono white deck, because my mono white deck will be Celestial Kyrian and it mass removals all the permanents all the time. So Hauling Mine and stuff isn't that efficient. But maybe my white black deck I could see putting it in there. I'm already playing it in white green Selvala deck. Of course, Selvala on her own is like a Howling Mine. And there you can see the strength. It's like this white-green deck that ramps that hard really loves these Howling Mine type effects, because they stay in there, they draw you cards, and whatever happens to your board, you will always have fuel for another turn. And other decks sit there and oftentimes you will see people discard their card draw spells because they won't need them. And that really puts you ahead, because normally this would be the strength of their deck is compared to yours, is that they have these card draw spells and you don't. And suddenly they discard them because they're bad, and you get an edge this way. And last but not least, as promised, the 4 pet cards of the month, the 2 rising pet cards and the 2 falling pet cards. So let's start with negative news. Palace Siege was one card I really liked from Khans of Tarkir, I think. Or was it Fate Reforged? It was Fate Reforged, of course. So Palace Siege was a card I figured would be cool to play with, just because you have this I will just like pillar fort myself up, kind of life drain type of deal when you're choosing. Let me get it out of here. Sorry. The Dragons one, and then you have the Khans option of returning a creature card every upkeep into your hand, which I figured, yes, that might be awesome in like these grindy, heavy attrition-y type of games. We just return your kind of add to the battlefield creatures turn after turn, and then get value that way. So like Muldrifter Evoke, return to hand, play him, jump block, return to hand, play him. This kind of game. And what I found is that the decks I played them in, which are of course the decks that should be the decks that could abuse them the most, the Palace Sieges, were decks where I never ever had a good opportunity to play them. I had always something better to play. And then when I needed the effect immediately, I was sitting there with this 5 mana card, which would take like half my turn, and I would play it and it would do nothing. And then maybe the next turn it would be too late for me to get the creature back. Like I needed the creature for removal, or I needed the creature to dig deeper into my deck. And that wasn't happening. Like I never had the chance to play it ahead of time. And when I needed to play it, it was already too late, because it would trigger the next upkeep. And sometimes it would just die to random austere commands or something, or planar cleansings. So Palace Siege dropped out of like 3 decks this week. The second card, Shrine of Piercing Vision, like the upkeep, uptick, and whenever you play blue spell, it gets a counter, a charge counter or something. And then if you tap and sacrifice it, you get to see X cards from the top of your library, which is the amount of counters on it. And then you get to pick one card and put the rest on the bottom. So this card, I at the start, I really liked it because it felt like this on turn 2 you have nothing to do. I will play this shrine and will over the course of the game tick up to like 7, 8, 9 counters. And then if you just like need an answer for something or you just want to go off, you just crack it and you have this little mini dig through time. Like you get to choose only one card, but you sometimes see more than 7 cards, which is awesome. It felt really good. But over the course of a few games, I figured, yeah, this is like only one. It's a cantrip, and the problem was when I was drawing it late, it wasn't really doing much. So triggering it over and over, of course, would do the trick. But same as Palace Siege, I drew it, and then I needed the card to. It would dig to me. It would dig me to it for, and it didn't do it. So yeah, I cut it because like I can't afford to play cards that are good early game but bad late game anymore. Like my decks kind of get to a point where they're really strong and I feel like they deserve better, so to speak. So yeah, those are the two non-favorites of the month, I'd say. The two favorites of the month are both from Commander 15, not really surprisingly. I really like the Commander-specific sets just because of the multiplayer feel to them. So yeah, Skullwinder, so like the Eternal Witness type of effect that also gets another player a card. I really like this card because not only you have this normal Eternal Witness effect for 3 mana, you get like anything back and a creature into play, but it also has Death Touch, which is like this really I dare say Death Touch is probably the best, if maybe one of the best static abilities a creature can have in EDH. And the returning someone else's card aspect of the card is something I would say is even making it play more than a normal Eternal Witness, just because of the political aspect to it. And sometimes it's like you have to work as a team, even if you're basically enemies. Sometimes someone's threatening to take over the game, and you're sitting there with the Skullwinder, and you see in someone else's graveyard there's the answer to it, and you just play the Skullwinder and return it to. They will return it to their hand, and you get a value as well, and then they can deal with this taking over the world type of guy, and everybody's happy. And the thing about it is, especially in these situations where you politically have to work together as a team or as a unit to prevent losing the game to a certain guy, especially in these situations, I think Skullwinder really excels, not because he gives a card to the opponent that will deal with the guy, but at the same time he provides a blocker for you, so you are very unlikely to get attacked because of the Death Touch, of course. And also the card you give to your opponent is a card that's very likely to get used immediately. So you basically give them a card short term, and you get just any card back you will need in the future, and be done with it. And I really like this aspect. So it's like you're forcing your opponents to deal with the threats you can't, and therefore giving them a card doesn't really count as giving them a card, so to speak. So yeah, I really like Highlander. And the second card I really like is Rite of the Raging Storm, the 5 mana enchantment that puts the 5/1 trample haste elementals into play. That's kind of the same thing. I really like these damage all players cards, just because it clocks up the games, or clocks down the games rather. It makes the games go faster, and that's the thing some EDH games really lack. And Rite of the Raging Storm does such a good job at it, just because these 5/1 elementals don't do shit except attacking. So people will just attack with them into anything, because they will have to sacrifice it anyway. And since they can't attack you, they will attack anybody else. So there's this huge slugfest of elementals flying everywhere except your place, and you will most likely get ahead on top, just because chump blocking will kill a creature of your opponents, and they will probably still take damage due to the trample, and if they don't, they take 5 damage, which is not irrelevant. And so yeah, just like there's nothing you can do wrong with the card. There's basically nothing. And also, if you play against someone who's playing Rite of the Raging Storm, your own right protects you against theirs. So like if 2 players have Rite of the Raging Storm in play, no one can attack either of those 2, but everybody will get 2 tokens, which then will speed up the game even more between the players that don't have Rite of the Raging Storm. I hope you could follow my explanations. So I really like the cards, Skullwinder and Rite. So I think Wizards did a pretty good job at printing them and designing them. Yeah, and to kind of finish this podcast, I would like to share a play I made in a recent game. I really liked, which was I countered something. What was it with in my Stitcher Geralt deck? So the mono blue fatties deck. I countered a Diluvian Primordial, I think, with I counter Lash. And for those of you who are not familiar with the card, it counters target spell, and then you can cast a spell of the same type for free. So I could cast a creature for free, and my creature to cast was the Grosoth. I don't know how to pronounce it correctly. So it's this Ravnica, old Ravnica block, a rare that's 9 mana defender, 9/9. And if it enters the battlefield, you can search for any number of cards with converted mana cost 9 and put them into your hand, which is the not so relevant part. Of course, I could search my deck for a card. I don't remember the name. It was Commander 14 Fatty something. But the following turn, so that was on my opponent's turn. And then I untap and cast an Ugin's Insight, which scries for X, where X is the highest converted mana cost of cards I own or have in play, which was the Grosoth at the time. So what I was able to do was scry 9 and then draw 3. So it was this like mega dig through time, which felt really insane. So yeah, I kind of wish everybody had one time where they could Ugin's Insight with the Grosoth into play, because it feels like awesome. You can stack your deck, you can draw 3 cards you need, and then leave 2 on top you want to mill with Stitcher Geralt, and 4 cards to the bottom you don't want. It's like this really insane value. You get count advantage, you get to set up your next turns, especially if you're playing that top of your library dependent like Stitcher Geralt. So yeah, really awesome play. I really enjoyed resolving the Ugin's Insight. Yeah, so with this, I want to how to put it. I want to spare you with more durdling and rumbling from me. I will end the podcast here. My voice is getting sore anyway. And yeah, I hope you liked it. I hope you enjoyed listening to me rambling about random things, my decks, my plays, what I think the new edition is going to do for EDH. And yeah, so have a nice day, have a nice evening, whatever time it is that you're listening to this, and see you all around, or hear you all around, I guess.